All right, Joe Borras and I are here for another week of EV bracket battle, ultimate EV battle bracket.
That sounds right.
Yes, ultimate EV battle bracket, where we're gonna go head to head with a couple of electric vehicles again in a big giant bracket that will end up with one overall winner. This week, we're gonna launch into what we've been planning, which is that the readers and viewers will pick the winner. So we'll have a poll available in the article about this, and I'll put it also in the description of the YouTube video.
And I think it's worth saying that we're going to let the users pick the winner, the readers pick the winner where it's too close to call. Like there's some of them where like the Model 3 beat the Mazda. Like it's just, you don't need to vote on that.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it'll be fun to see the results anyway, to see if it's 60-40 versus 90-10 on some of these.
That's true. That's definitely
super
true.
eager to see the results of some of them for sure. The Hummer versus the Mini, but we'll get to that later. Today, we actually have, this is a phenomenal first. I mean, this is like one of those, popcorn match they say in the first round, because really both of these vehicles should get further into the bracket, but one of them can't since it's a first round head to head. But it's the Tesla Model Y versus a Ford Mustang Mach-E.
Yeah, it's such a neat comparison, right? Because to me, they're very similar cars. And it's like a very subtle thing, right? Because to me, they're both cars that started off as, one as a sedan and one obviously as a coupe. And then they had a stylist or a designer translate those styling cues into a taller crossover-y body, right? And I think part of the argument is, number one, if you like the way the Model 3 looks and you think the Model 3 is a better looking car than the Mustang, you're probably going to think the Model Y is a better looking car than the Mach-E. If you like the way the Mustang looks, you might either say, I like the Mustang styling cues of the Mach-E, or you'll go the other way and get all upset and say, like, it's not a real Mustang. They shouldn't even call it a Mustang, right? So I think that's a very real aspect to all this.
I mean, they really are two of the top vehicles I would recommend, and I would recommend for many of the same reasons. And I tell people, it really comes down to what you prefer in styling and a couple of certain features. I mean, I'm gonna be repping the Model Y. I would recommend it across the board, looking at all the factors over the Mach-E. But at the same time, in all honesty, I would tell anyone, if you like the look and the design and the feel of the Mach-E more, to just get the Mach-E, then it's better for you. It's a better vehicle for you. I think there's enough similarity in what they offer that it really comes down to personal preferences. And although there's some factors we'll talk about, I think with cars, it often comes down to personal preferences on looks of the car.
That's what gets people. We often talk about, this idea that when I was selling cars and motorcycles, we talked about the fitness of the thing, right? And we had to say that, this product has to fit you in three ways. It has to fit your needs, has to fit your lifestyle. If you have 5 people to carry, you can't buy a Miata, right? It has to fit your sense of personal style, right? Like you have to be able to see yourself in it and get excited by it, which I think speaks to this idea of personal preference. And it has to fit your budget, right? And last time I checked, my local Ford dealer was still trying to get an extra 10 or 15 grand out of me to drive a Mustang, which, you could argue that
Tesla also jacked up the price of the Model Y. So yeah, if you can find a $10,000 difference between these vehicles, that might be the decider too. But they're both in a kind of range. It's like a little bit outside of the normal person's range, but it's yeah. Well, let's get into it. So I do think the Mustang Mach-E looks phenomenal. It's one of the best looking cars on the road. I love seeing it. I still have a preference for the minimalism, the sleek, like elegant, like Puma-like design of a Tesla. It's as good as it gets for car design, in my opinion. I know you disagree, which you would be happy to talk about, but I think it's as good as it gets. I remember being on the test track of the Model 3 when it was unveiled. Kyle Field and I were there for a couple hours taking photos and videos, and it's just like, holy cow, are you kidding me? This is what they've come out with. This is like got a kind of Porsche vibes, Aston Martin vibes, Tesla Model S vibes, And the Model Y is just, even in some cases, I think it looks better. The only thing I would say is Teslas are all over the place now, and the Mustang Mach-E really stands out more. You know, I have to
I
give
think,
it points for that. I get much more excited
yeah,
seeing a Mach-E than I do a Model Y because I don't see them as much, and they have cool color, really good colors, really awesome color choices.
I was gonna say that, like, if you see the yellow or the blue Mustang, I mean, it just like grabs your attention. Where the Model Y, even though it looks very similar and it has a similar style to it, they're always white or gray or black. And it's interesting to hear you and Kyle talk about the Model Y and the Model 3 that way, because they are so aerodynamic, and there is that sort of engineering purist sense of looking at it and going, wow, this crease here, look at the way that they did the lip here and the way they did the mirror here, and how aerodynamic and efficient that shape really is. And there is definitely something to that. As a car
But I just think
enthusiast,
it's pretty. I mean, I mean the air,
yeah,
sure,
and
the
that's,
engineering, but I just think it looks pretty.
yeah, but I think the prettiness of it is subjective.
Well, I would say the funny story. When I was in line for reservations for the Model 3, the lady right in front or right behind us, she knew almost nothing about the company. She saw a Tesla on the road one day and was like, wow, what is that really cool, pretty car? And she searched T car because she saw the T, and she found the price and was like, oh, that's outside my budget. But then she found out later, some months later, from a Facebook post from someone that they were coming out with a more affordable one, and she was like, oh, I'm going to get that one. So she purely got in line early on for a reservation because she thought Teslas were pretty. I get that it looks sort of plain. I mean, I sort of get it. I think I see what you're, especially seeing a lot more of them around.
I will tell you
For me,
this.
it's just, it looks beautiful.
Yeah, I will tell you this. If I just see it out of the corner of my eye and it's a quick glance and there's not other cars around it, like if there's only one vehicle at the Tesla supercharger, and it's a Model Y or a Model 3, I'm going to be honest, I can't always tell which one it is.
Well, I think that's normal. That's quite normal because they're so similar. They're just yeah. I remember one of my neighbors who was a CleanTechnica reader as well thought he saw a Model Y when when they weren't really on the road much, and it was just the angle on the back right that he was at. It was a Model 3, and so it depends on,
He was like at a
like,
low angle.
yeah, there's a certain angle where like the back of the Model 3 looks bigger, like it's a Model Y. But anyway, with the Mach-E, I mean, I'm not a huge fan of the nose cone. That's the only thing. But I mean, it brings, it's got long history. I love the taillights.
But
they're
you just
so
said it.
cool.
You just said it exactly. It has a long history. And I think they did a really good job. And again, this comes back to, if you like Mustangs, right? I had an 87 Fox body, an 85 Fox body. I'm very familiar with these cars. I've driven a ton of the SN95s and the Bullet cars. I really like these cars. And to see a lot of those styling cues, I think, very successfully transferred over into the crossover body shape. It looks like it's got a really aggressively raked rear glass, but if you look at it, a lot of the roof is actually painted black and it disappears visually. So
Yeah.
they take a much boxier car and make it look a lot racier with some intelligent design cues there. And I really like it. I do look at it as like, this is the grown-up Mustang, right? Like I still want a Mustang, but I have to drive my kids to school. This works. It looks like a Mustang. And
I'm older and bigger and
I'm
not
older.
as
I'm a little bit
flexible.
wider. The SN95, my elbow kind of sits on the door armrest weird, which is true. It does. But it's interesting, right? Because if you don't care about those things, if you're coming out of this, you're Gen Z, you have no appreciation for the Mustang history. If anything, you may even have a little bit of disdain for it because the angry boomers at the car meets that drive these Mustangs have offended you in some way. I totally get that. In that context, the success of the design is meaningless. And I think, honestly, it's a good looking enough car. But if it wasn't called Mustang, if it was just called like, Model
Sure.
E Ford or whatever, like, I wouldn't care about it.
If it didn't have that horse on the front, it would be a
If it
different thing.
didn't have the horse on the front, it would be a different animal. And I don't think it would be as successful because
No.
what it is is a Mustang crossover.
And we could try to highlight a little more. So aside from the black roof, with which they shrunk the car visually with, they also have the black under the between the wheels on the
Yep.
side. If I don't have a good view on mine, but if you move over maybe and talk, I think you have to talk to for Zoom to
Well,
you
we
have to
can,
talk.
it'll give us the zoom, but if you look at it there, the what they call that is side cladding and dorsals, and by making that black, they've narrowed the car again. They've also put monstrous wheels on it, and the
Yeah.
huge wheels give the whole car a smaller sense. The Hyundai Ioniq is the same way, the Ioniq 5. It looks from 30 feet away without the context of other vehicles, it looks almost like it's the size of a VW GTI. It looks like kind of a hot hatch proportion. And then as you keep walking towards it, it just keeps getting bigger and bigger. And you're like, whoa. But I think the Mach-E is a great size. My wife really liked it when it came out. The first time we drove one, we had a premium to drive. We had that for a week and a half. And then recently, it's funny. So this is an admission that I have to make as an EV writer. I've never driven a Model Y, which is absolutely absurd. It's the most popular car in the world right now. There's no excuse for that. And Zachary told me, he said, you need to go drive a Model Y. If you're going to talk about it, if you're going to poop on it, you got to definitely go drive it. And I got really excited about it. I got all ready to go and drive the Model Y. And I went to this Ford event instead and drove a Mustang Mach-E GT in grabber blue, which is like what you see here, because I was really excited about it. And like, I'm not just the fact that it is the most common, most popular, hottest selling EV is kind of a turnoff for me.
Well, you still have to drive it, but you mentioned that you've driven the Model 3 a lot, and it is very similar driving.
Yeah, I've put a
Model 3.
couple hundred miles on a Model 3, and it was fine.
The Model Y was closer to the Model 3 than I expected in handling all that, but it's still a bigger vehicle. I think they're both the perfect, I mean, for me, like sort of the perfect size vehicle. I don't like really big vehicles. A lot of people drive the Escalades. I think your wife has XC90, right? All of these bigger SUVs, I can't stand driving them. And, it's mostly women who do drive those. They like them more. But, I want space for my family. So a crossover small SUV is perfect. They're small enough size. They have great handling. They have fun. They're fun to drive. Well, just on the last things on design, I would just say the tail lights and the headlights on the Mustang are phenomenal. I love them both, and I love the crease on the hood of the Mustang Mach-E.
Yeah,
the creases, they just look so fabulous. But again, the colors really the best. Like, I'm not a fan of the blue or the red. The blue a little bit. The red, I'm not a fan of at all on the Teslas. And then that's it. I mean, then it's
the
like black,
Tesla
white, or gray.
red is
I don't like the Tesla red.
no, it's remarkably flat. It's a weird kind of flat
too
color.
Too dark for me. But the blue and as you said, the yellowish orangish color of the But even if you see a gray one, they just look good. Like, they just look really good. But getting to the driving dynamics, again, very similar. What tastes you have, it's up to you what you really prefer. I like that the Model Y felt a little firmer, feel more solid, more closer to the ground, like the Model 3. The Model Y like just had a little bit more, like, you're leaning when you turn.
Yeah, I had a little more body roll.
A little bit more, like, it didn't feel like one solid piece of. And we took these to the racetrack with Blake Fuller, a very accomplished race car driver. So I was in both of these on the race car track, and him driving the Mustang Mach-E on the race car track, like, he knew how to do it. Like, I would never have thought that it was possible to drive it like that and not fall over. But so it really held its own. He was really impressed with it, and that was not the GT version. So it was, I think it just comes down to, when you drive it, which one do you feel like the feel of more? They just feel different, and the braking is very different. The braking is very sensitive on the Mustang Mach-E, which was hard to get used to. And I prefer the Tesla, but if I drove the Mustang Mach-E for a week or two, maybe I would start to like the more sensitive brakes of the Mustang. I don't know.
I did find the Mustang brakes to be a little bit touchy. To me, that wasn't a negative. To me, that made it feel like a sports car. And that's one of the things that you look for, is like, you want that instant grab from the brakes. You want that instant acceleration. And I felt like there was a much bigger difference in the drive modes on the Mustang than I got from the Tesla 3. Just like the most aggressive version is so much more aggressive than the what do they call it, the whisper, or the the horse whisper
Yeah,
kind of
don't
thing.
drive it in whisper mode, but then some people really might prefer whisper mode, yeah.
So in Chicago, in the city, when I was driving around, it was the time of the auto show, so it was back in February. I spent most of the time in whisper mode because it was just a lot easier to drive it in heavy traffic.
But if I recall correctly, do they always default to whisper mode when you start the car? It never does. It never.
I don't
save?
remember because I
I
set
feel
it.
like it. I feel like it always started you there, and you had to change it. But maybe I'm wrong. I forget now. It's been a little while.
I don't remember. I think if you set up like the seat memory and the user memory, I think it'll set to whatever you want. But
Okay.
but again, I had specifically told it comfort, or for the whisper mode, so I got what I asked for regardless. I will say this, I want to take the conversation away from the design, and even away from the driving dynamics, because I agree that they are very similar, right? They're just similar cars. If you want something a little aggressive, a little sportier, yeah, the Mustang is there, but honestly, the Model Y performance is stupid fast. We know that. Both of these cars on public roads, not a racetrack. I think on a racetrack, if you're driving around Button Willow, or you live in Joliet and you're taking it out to the Autobahn Country Club, like, yeah, get the Mustang. But if you're not doing that, I think you're splitting hairs. They both will rocket you up an on ramp. You will pass that semi like it's standing still. There's nothing there. But I do think, and I'm going to switch my background here, and I will not say that the interior on the Ford is built worse than the Tesla, but like, man, did they rip off Tesla for this interior? I can't think of a more Tesla-y interior than the Mustang Mach-E, and I don't think it's as successful. I think that giant iPad-y thing in the middle is kind of jarring. It doesn't flow with the design. It's not particularly user friendly. I think that there was a race from the automakers to have the biggest, baddest iPad screen in the middle of the car, but I don't think it works here. I wanted a smaller screen. I wish it was removable.
See, I liked it. I like this move. I was like, oh, look at that. Someone really just they swallowed their pride and they did it. And I thought it was better. I don't think it's better than the Tesla system. The Tesla system is better, but I like that it's big and usable. They should have made it horizontal. I mean, this was, they sort of copied the old version instead of what was coming. It's just much more
right, because
horizontal.
when they started designing this car, the Teslas had them vertical, and then the car came out and Tesla had it horizontal. We're like, oh well.
Yeah, and but I liked that they struck a balance between just a screen like the Model Y and Model 3 have, and some buttons and more buttons and knobs. I actually like that volume controlled thing, that dial on the bottom. Some people hate it. I like it a lot. It's one of the things that still drives my wife nuts, is having to deal with the funky volume controls from the passenger side.
I'll tell you, I like the knob. I like the big volume control because I don't have to take my eyes off the road to access it. But I felt like it, and I have the same criticism in the Volvo. So, like, if I'm criticizing the Volvo, it's obviously something that really bothers me. I feel like it invites the passenger to mess with the audio, and it's like, no, you're the passenger. You sit there.
This is a personal situation for you. Yeah. Well, I will say too,
I think that's legitimate.
On the Tesla, I control the audio with the scroll wheel on the steering wheel, which it's just super easy to do. And I don't know. I think people don't have Teslas don't realize that you don't ever deal with that as a driver, the screen volume, but the passenger has to, and it's really annoying, especially if it gets bumpy and it's just a really annoying. The volume control on the Tesla is really not well done. So having that knob is a nice feature.
If I was designing this
really
car,
not bad. I was telling everyone it's like 80% of a Tesla. It's like, this is sort of like, you could say 60 to 80% Tesla, and then 20 to 40% traditional Ford is sort of how I would couch it. And so people who don't want to go full Tesla, full Monty, but they want to get into the 2020s in an EV with the infotainment, they have that. But after you give your word again, I'm just going to tear into the infotainment for a second.
Oh man, Ford's infotainment system, yeah, have at it, man.
it just doesn't have Netflix, it doesn't have Disney Plus, it doesn't have video games, it doesn't have all the stuff that I actually use in the Tesla infotainment. The screen is great for controls, but I mean, Tesla just knocks it out of the park. Nobody else has anything like this with all the features you can have while you're waiting in the pickup line for your kid, or you're
Yeah,
on a road trip
I
somewhere.
care about none of that, but I agree with you 100%. If I connect CarPlay or Android Auto, because I have both of the phones because of all the website stuff I do, I want to make sure it works on both phones. If I plug it in, it doesn't occupy the entire tablet in the Ford. It just occupies that top half. And then there's like this weird nebulous gray bar that they just don't have graphics for. And like, that's so embarrassing. And it is such a kludge. Like, guys, come on. This is the most basic stuff. Like, if you're going to have CarPlay in 2022, it's a 7-year-old product. Like, let it do its thing. I just found that to be particularly unforgivable. And the other thing that I will say, and I don't actually know if the Tesla does this either, but I will say that the giant, massive sunroof on the Mach-E, the first thing I tried to do was close it, and I couldn't do it. There is no functional mechanism to close that. There's no LCD to dim it. There's no little screen for it. The best thing you can do, I Googled it, was an aftermarket Ford accessory that you could like suction cup up into the glass. And I
Yeah,
I
well, if
thought that
I
was
mean,
embarrassing.
if we want to go there, I spent half the year with heat shields, sun shields on our glass roof of our Tesla to block the sun coming in.
It doesn't close either.
It's just a glass roof, and there's so much heat comes through.
Oh yeah,
Like
it's horrible.
it's like it'll burn you to the touch, and then it's right above my head, so it's like the heat is like, but it gets really
I
hot,
need to
and it's
save that sound.
no, we have heat shields across, I mean, designed for the glass roof that we're just now taking them off as it's getting cool here. But yeah, I the one thing as you were talking that I remembered though, I loved the graphics on the small screen behind the wheel and the big screen. They just have some really fun graphics when you get in and out of the car. This kind of these really nice visuals. So I thought that was really nice. It just makes you feel good. It's like, oh yeah, my car. Tesla doesn't have any of those fun. Oh hello, they just turn on. The screen turns on. There's no like, you're special.
Yeah, there,
And,
exactly. You are not a part of a 60-year history of pony car heritage.
and sometimes Tesla tries to teach you you're not special. This is sort of
So,
their. It's you're lucky to be driving a Tesla. Now, don't ask for anything more.
it does feel a little bit commoditized. I'll tell you that.
Just yeah, I mean,
I want to make this
service and all that.
comment on the glass roof, though. This week, I'm driving a Genesis, which is Hyundai's big fancy car, and I'm driving a G80, and it has the full steel roof. Like, not that it doesn't have a sunroof, but it has the full steel roof, right? And it has been so, because the Volvos that I've had have the glass roof. A lot of the EVs that I test have the glass roof. It's been a long time since I've been in a car that was enclosed like that. And I got to tell you, it felt nice. It feels nice. I mean, to drive it like that, you do it does give you like a sense of gravitas that you are like, not, it's the exact opposite of the Ioniq 5, where you kind of feel like you're in this like light, airy, floaty future. This feels like Gordon Gekko. I want to short stocks. I want to put old ladies on out of the street and like flip their their homes for profit. Like, it's a very different feel. And I wonder if we've kind of seen the glass roof thing play out, and if it's going to start to shift the other way, because the EQS, that glass roof, I think, is optional. I don't think you have to take that and the Mercedes. You can get that steel roof again. So I wonder if that's
I don't know.
that's coming.
And I've wondered how much is safety related, because I know it's apparently safer than you would expect, and safer than a normal roof, the glass roof on the Tesla at least. But yeah, well, I would just well, I almost want to go back to the design, because I'm looking at those wheels on the Mach-E behind me, and I just love those wheels.
They're
But
so
no,
sick.
we're
Yeah.
done with the design. But I mean, you can see much of this discussion is about design in the end, which one you prefer. But there's the infotainment, there's the supercharging, which we didn't talk about. There's still people having a lot of issues in non-Tesla ultra fast chargers. So if you are going to go on a lot of road trips and use fast charging, the Tesla wins hands down
Yeah,
for
I
that.
think Ford really dropped the ball on this. And the problem with Ford is not that it has poor access to charging, right? Because I mean, it actually it charges very quickly. It's very efficient in that sense. It can be used in many networks,
It's
but
got
they have
plug-in
put out
charge capability where you just plug in
exactly
and
right.
it starts charging.
But they have put out this messaging that like, what is it, like Ford Blue charging or something, that like we are now part of this giant network of chargers and Ford has the biggest charging network. But that's very disingenuous. They don't have a charging network. They don't have a single, that I know of, a single Ford charging network station in the ground anywhere. But to market it that way, I think is very misleading. And I think if you are coming from a Tesla and you have familiarity with that supercharger experience, or you've been talking to someone who owns a Tesla and that is your EV experience, you are going to have a really tough time with this Mustang. And honestly, there are apps out there. I always plug my buddy Matt and his app. There
Matt
are
Teskey,
apps.
Chargeway.
Yeah, Matt Teskey. Hey, buddy. Hope you're listening.
He just says Matt today. He's like, takes the shortcut. Like,
Well,
you all can
I
figure
don't
out
want
the
to
Matt I'm
plug him
talking
on
about.
every episode, but
That's fine. That's
I don't
fine. We
want to
like
plug
it.
him on every episode, but Chargeway really is a useful app, especially in a car that you're unfamiliar with. But if you can't use the CarPlay and you can't use Android Auto the way that it's supposed to be used, then the app experience is bad. And if you're going to build a connected car and you're going to build a car in 2022 that is basically a piece of rolling computer hardware, it needs to interact with the software properly. And no matter how good it looks or no matter how good it drives, I just don't think the Mach-E team got that right. And I think that their approach to charging, I think is wrong. It's the inverse, right? Like I always pick on Tesla for their build quality and this and that. And then I kind of begrudgingly say it's a better customer experience. I think you have to be pretty committed to buying a Mustang to justify the Mach-E on this one. For me, I think I might have to say I would recommend the Tesla to somebody.
I like how
If
we
my
could both
neighbor,
recommend either one.
yeah,
One design thing that we missed was that wonderful colorful stitching in on the seats of. I still prefer the soft vegan white leather seats of the Tesla, but everybody loved we had the blue stitching because we had a grabber blue Mach-E here. But this really cool like kind of design of the stitching in the seats.
But that's a good point.
Nice
There's no vegan option. There is no vegan option in the Ford, right?
Yeah, it's a kind of, I mean, if some people like those seats more, I think it depends on preference again. I will just say I happened to see a tweet from Matt Teskey he was viewing the Northern Lights, and I don't know Matt, but I was like, oh, that's Joe. It was like at the top of my Twitter feed. I was like, oh, that's Joe's friend Matt. I was like, and I commented
well, no,
like,
so
oh, I want to see this.
This is actually interesting enough. I think we should put it in the podcast. He is actually in Reykjavik, Iceland, and he's going into the UK, and he's speaking about how to roll out a charging network and how to communicate the language of electric fuel to traditionally buyers of diesel cars and gasoline. And I think that's what he does best, is he really understands how to tell a story and do that. I was talking to another company, another app that has a similar trip planner, and their trip planner required a lot of work where you had to kind of lay out your trip, and then it would say, how far do you want to drive between chargers? Then it would say, this is the chargers that are that far apart. And I don't think that is really the way.
Market. That's for the
that's
early
not mass
adopters.
market. That's early. Thank you. That's exactly
I could probably
right.
guess the one, but it's the early adopters I think love it, and the mass market would be like, no thanks. Well, let's get down to the conclusion, the brass tacks, as I say.
There's no conclusion here.
I'm just gonna go back to, I think from my perspective, I enjoy how the Tesla drives more. I enjoy the look of it more, the minimalistic design in interior and exterior, the infotainment more, and the supercharging more. But I also love the Mach-E in many ways, and there's something about the design that I find sometimes, or in some ways, more appealing. And I'll just say what I said again, like what I would say to anyone: which one do you like more? Which one pulls on your heartstrings more? Because that's the one you should get, I think.
Yeah, exactly right. I think the Mustang Mach-E, that is, a 21st century Mustang that is Mustang looking forward, not backward, with a nod to the past, but still eyes on the future. And if you want a Mustang, that's the best Mustang you can buy right now. And if you want a very practical electric crossover that's going to meet your needs and give you a better software and charging experience, buy the Tesla. If you want a car, buy the Tesla. If you want a Mustang, buy the Mach-E.
Yeah, and I just big props to Ford because they had like nothing before this came out. They had, and
That's such a good point. This was their first real swing.
They had, and they set up this little like startup like thing within it called Team Edison. That was, they said just make the best electric car you can make. They had freedom to use their biggest brands, and they nailed it. They absolutely nailed it. I mean, they just did a wonderful job. So great vehicle. Sorry you can't get to the second round. Oh well, voting is still. We'll see if the Ford clan comes in and outvotes the Model Y.
There's no way. With our audience, it's going to be like 92% Tesla.
I don't know.
There's no way.
We'll see. We're going to jump on to the next one where we're going to talk, I think, a lot more about charging in the next battle. But
the next battle is going to be a lot more about charging. Absolutely.
Can we give a little bit of a preview? Can we say which is coming next?
Absolutely. The next bracket battle is the Lucid Air. I believe specifically the Lucid Air Dream Edition versus the Taycan, but I think we'll just do a general sort of Lucid Airy Porsche Taycan kind of thing.
Cool. All right. So check in for that.